Now let's jump straight into the topic. Let me share my screen here. There we go. I hope you're seeing all the slides. I don't go full screen because I need to use like tabs and so on. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about getting the ethics of AI right. I'm conscious this is a very broad and big topic and complex. I don't claim I will exhaust it in less than an hour speaking with you. So this presentation is really more like myself confronting myself with a theme in different aspects of, let's say, where my career spanned and my research spanned in the past 10 years. And I want to give a lot of food for thoughts. And I know I'm not going to cover every single topics related to this. But yeah, I really hope you enjoy this and you have plenty of questions afterwards. So before jumping straight into ethical problems, ethical issues, or case studies, I want to clarify a few definitions. So it's important, first of all, to know what we mean by AI. This definition is debated. There's no consensus, even among academics or the so-called fathers of AI. But let's start from the dictionary. What does it mean, artificial? Artificial is something man-made. Sometimes implies inferiority. Like I like this example. Like if you gift artificial flowers to someone, they're not going to be as happy as receiving real flowers. But it's important to understand that it's something like simulated, it's an imitation. And what do we mean by intelligence? Again, let's look at the dictionary. Intelligence is the ability to learn, understand, grasping truths. It involves reasoning and applying knowledge to new situations. Intelligence is a huge phenomenon studied by psychologists, social scientists, and so on. And again, there's no consensus of really what is intelligence, or what is human intelligence, or what is animal intelligence, let alone machine intelligence. Now, the field of AI was defined in the 50s, however, is as old as probably philosophy is. Like the very first time humans tried to encapsulate logical reasoning or codify logic into an algorithm, that was the time of Aristotle, ancient Greece philosophers who were trying to explain how good thinking works with the syllogism. So the field of codifying logic, codifying rationality and intelligence is super old. And artificial intelligence is a convergence of disciplines, let's say, between many fields. But what we know today as AI is a field born in computer science in the 50s. Alan Turing spoke about machines that could think. However, we don't have yet a agreed or good sense of what is thinking and what is a machine. Philosopher and professor of ethics at Yale, Luciano Floridi, is the director of the Center of Digital Ethics at Yale, author of many books about the ethics of information, digital technology, and so on. And lately, he has been writing a lot about AI. He gives a very interesting definition of artificial intelligence. He speaks about artificial agency. So he sees AI as a new kind of agency. So we have now a new way to perform tasks that once we believed only humans or intelligent beings like humans could perform. And Professor Floridi also underlines one important fact, which is that AI is successful when we can decouple, we can separate agency from intelligence. What it means is that when we create a tool like ChatGPT, it's probably a false or a misdirecting thought to be surprised. Oh, it speaks like a human. The more interesting thing is, we created an engineering artifact, and what's interesting is that we don't need human intelligence to get a computer to write meaningful text. So that's That's what the real discovery is with large language models. Another AI expert working at University of South Wales, Toby Walsh, he wrote a book recently called Faking It, so explaining that AI is fakery, so faking intelligence, which is a good way to think about it, because even if we speak about the Turing test, there was this famous test to ascertain whether a computer is intelligent or not. In the end of the day, what the computer needs to do is just to give the impression to generate text as a human person would do, but it doesn't imply any intelligence. And finally, I want to remind a leading figure in the world of AI, especially lately, like last week, it was all over the news, Mustafa Suleyman. He was the co-founder of DeepMind, one of the very first super successful AI labs that was acquired by Google in 2014. He founded recently another startup doing large language models and conversational agents. And last week, he joined Microsoft AI, like a new unit of Microsoft. However, what's interesting is that Mustafa Suleyman wrote a book recently called The Coming Wave, where he describes a lot of interesting waves of technologies, among which AI. And he founded DeepMind with the purpose of solving artificial general intelligence, or AGI. And so he was one of the, let's say, proponent of AGI, of the concept of AGI. However, in the book, he clearly takes distance from this terminology, from this way of anthropomorphizing technology. And he speaks about artificial capable intelligence as opposed to AGI, which is a significant detachment from that. And I think it's very much needed, because there is too much, let's say, useless debate on super intelligence and things that are more of the realm of science fiction than reality and engineering. And again, the definition of artificial capable intelligence focuses on the word capable. So what is the task at hand? What is the machine capable of performing? Now, what I call AI, having taken a career path from statistics to computer science, and having studied all the AI 101 classes and so on, my grasp of what AI is that, first of all, it is a software. So it's not a Frankenstein, it's not a creation, a human. It's software written by humans. It's very important to understand that a lot of the times we hear on the press or social media the AI programs itself. That's a false statement. That is not what happens under the hood. There's no such a thing as software writing software. Yes, they can do it, but it's because it's engineering, it's human engineering that achieves that objective. So it's software written by humans. Therefore, liability is always a human of that software to achieve human objectives, and it may have statistical error. So this is very important. Most of the software that we know today, or that has been built until the early 2000s or so, is deterministic software. So we have an input, we have an output, we know all the path from input to output. Whereas the recent success of machine learning, which is statistical methods applied to AI, a certain input give an output which is stochastic, so that can have errors, so there can be false positive, there can be, even if it is a 1 in a million case, there is always, by very nature of the algorithm, there is always a statistical error. So it's software and has a high degree of adaptivity, autonomy, and act rationally. Adaptivity means that these software outputs can improve their performance by acquiring more data about the environment in which they operate. They have a high degree of autonomy, so there isn't like a human person underneath, like clicking something or guiding the software all the time. They can perform tasks in a complex environment, think about autonomous driving, without constant user guidance. And finally, act rationally. Russell and Norvig, professors at UC Berkeley, they wrote the typical textbook of AI 101 classes in computer science. And in the book, they stress a lot the definition of AI as a rational agent. They like the word rational because rational is defined mathematically and doesn't, it's not susceptible to interpretations like human behavior or thinking or these other ways that distort the attention of what AI really is. Okay, so I think we clarified what we mean by AI, and this is not very different from what was recently agreed by the ISO standards. So if you check the ISO standards, then we will return to that later. The ISOs agreed on the definition of what is an AI system, and it's an engineered system, so it's an engineering artifact that generates outputs such as content, forecasts, recommendations, or decisions. The word decision is very important from the ethical point of view, for a given set of human-defined objectives. Again, there is no such a thing as the AI thinks, the AI does. The objective is always humanly defined. Let's go on with some important definitions. What do we mean by ethics? Here I'm borrowing the definition from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Ethics is understood to be the study of living well as human beings. And the aim of human beings is to exemplify human excellence of character. Now I want to do another little deep dive. What is business ethics? Why it's important, business ethics? Because the success of AI recently, in the end of the day, it's due because AI is good business. So AI stopped being purely an academic endeavor roughly 10, 15 years ago when it entered into our lives with the massive penetration of mobile and digital technologies. And so AI today is good business, and a lot of the drive behind AI adoption and the race of developing AI is the profitability of this business. So it's important to understand that business ethics deals with questions such as what sorts of things can be sold, how can they be sold, is it permissible for companies to try to influence political outcomes? And again, if we look at these questions, they're very much applicable to AI. I think the audience is aware of how AI is used to influence political campaigns, for instance. So why ethics is important in AI? Part of it is what I just covered in the previous slide. So AI is good business. So there is a race to adopt AI, and it's very fast, not very thought through. So it's important, given that we have had the history of social media and many of the monsters they created in society, it's important to stop and think what a technology like AI can develop and what can become for society. And there is also another point regarding why ethics is important, is that philosophically speaking, and this is also why I stressed a lot the definition of AI. Philosophically speaking, AI is challenging some of the concepts we have as what it means to be a human person. And we will return to this concept when I will give some food for thoughts on ethical principles to follow. Now, what I want to focus on in the second part of this talk is how AI can be used ethically in the development of AI, deployment, and use. The case studies, they focus more on deployment and use. And the last part, when I speak about principles and some of my personal experiences, is more about development. Now, jumping into some case studies, there are some companies who have been at the forefront of automated revolutions lately, and who have, let's say, adopted technology in a way that is interesting to look at, and it poses some good examples of ethical adoption of automation and ethical choices done by businesses and senior management and executives. First example is Panera Bread. In 2017, they introduced a new digital payment platform. This is not straight away an example of AI, but it's more about automation. So, and AI is a form of automation in the end of the day. But the good example here is that this company introduced a new payment platform, which led to a huge spike in volume of orders from people ordering sandwiches and soups from home. And these ended up creating 10,000 new roles. That's an interesting outcome. So adopting some heavy automation of a critical business process did not lose jobs. It did the opposite, created many more. And moreover, the company did an interesting choice. So they decided to hire their own drivers directly rather than using services like Uber Eats or Deliveroo. And again, that's an interesting choice. If we think of companies like rationale of a company purely maximizing their P&L, this choice maybe doesn't make sense. But again, when we speak about business ethics, we are not optimizing only for one thing. Let's say, there are many principles and considerations and contexts to be aware of. In 2022, so quite recently, they adopted an AI tool called Turi. So this is a language model chatbot developed by a startup that automates all the experience of drive-through ordering. And again, that's an interesting, let's say, ethical consideration, because that's a very, let's say, dehumanizing job. Like, there is a person sit down at a microphone all the day, just processing order of people driving through. And Panera Bread did not fire all these people whose job was automated away, but they retained the staff and retrained them for other stuff, and also registered much higher job satisfaction for these people who stopped taking orders over a microphone the whole day, but started doing other tasks and learning other skills. Another good example of automation is Marlin Steel. In the early 2000s, they faced a lot of competition from Chinese manufacturers. And especially the first product that they saw a lot of drop in revenue was baskets. So there were baskets formed by these small wires of steel, and they were bended and assembled by human workers. And Chinese competitors, they were producing them at half the cost. So they had to adopt robots to do that and decrease the cost of producing these baskets. And the effect of these was, rather than displacing jobs, was more hiring, increased wages. Especially they attracted more workers with diverse set of skills that had to start managing these computer assisted production processes. And in an interview on USA Today, Merlin Street CEO credited automation not only with saving the company, but also making current employees super productive. Third example of, let's say, ethical automation and providing good outcome is Boxed. In 2017, they invested a lot in AI and robotic equipment that replaced the work of 100 order fulfillment workers. So these are robots quite similar to the Amazon factories and dispatching stations. Box retrained and promoted all these workers in different departments. So some increased their wages, and others just changed to more, let's say, people-facing roles like customer service. And some of the workers that were temporary, they became, again, another slice of workers who got a wage increase. In an interview in USA Today, Box CEO said that, again, this logic, it's not always about profit optimization. So I will be the first to admit that it is not the smartest thing we've ever done when it comes to the balance sheet, but it is what we do. And so these examples pose some interesting choices that companies have made, and where, let's say, automation of a large number of tasks that were previously performed by humans, or we thought they required human intelligence to perform, can now be performed by robots. And so these speak about a few topics that we will later on try to formalize in some principles, but also speak about this concept that I was mentioning, proposed by Professor Floridi, which is that AI is a new form of agency. So we can see this technology really as we have a new way to perform tasks. And as a consequence, we can reorganize companies and societies around what tasks can be automated and versus what tasks make sense to still do as human persons. Now, in the meantime, what we see happening in tech? Tech companies, we have another picture. So we have the IBM CEO last year made this announcement to replace 7,800 jobs with AI. And I think he had to retract this announcement because there was like a massive PR pushback and problem with that. And we heard lately, I think it's a news of the past couple of weeks that was going around the social media, that Zuckerberg is emailing personally some AI talent from Google DeepMind to hire them even without interview. But at the same time, Meta, just I think cut more than 10,000 jobs in the past couple of years. Google is doing the same. They just completed in January or February as like a second round of layoffs where they laid off again thousands of people. At the same time, they hire and spend top dollars, billions of dollars to train quite questionable large language models. Another example is Grammarly, fantastic company, fantastic product. They raised 200 million at 13 billion valuations a couple of years ago. And now they're laying off 230 employees again with this AI craze and race to develop AI, so cutting costs everywhere else that is not like large language models. So again, here we see another set of business and ethical choices, and why we need more ethical choice in AI. Why is artificial intelligence a field or a technology that draws us to ask and to delve deeper into ethical considerations and so on? Why didn't this happen with with the internet or with with the washing machine? There are many reasons, many historical trends, and again, I don't want to speak for days here or analyze the vastness of this topic, but I want to give some food for thoughts here that I think helps us framing the problem quite well. And this is again an insight that I've got from Professor Floridi's work on the ethics of AI and the ethics of digital technologies. There is a concept that Floridi describes in a book called The Ethics of AI, Principles, Challenges, and Opportunities. And so he recalls the concept of robotic enveloping in industrial robots. What is enveloping? Enveloping is something like an invisible bubble that shows where a robot can reach and work. As a matter of fact, when you see all the industrial robots in operation, they only have a limited space around them where they can perform actions. If you put one of these robots in your kitchen, they would probably not work, or they will be useless. And the concept of enveloping is important to understand that artificial intelligence, like many robotic processes and automations, is successful where we can envelop an environment where they can succeed. Now, I'm going to give some examples to understand what this means for digital technologies, so abandoning a bit the physical space. But first, I want to make an example on a field where I worked in. I worked at Tesla, so autonomous vehicle is something very interesting. And every time I'm asked to speak about autonomous driving or where we are with autonomous driving, etc., I am quite opinionated on the topic, but my short, let's say, in a nutshell, what I believe about autonomous driving is that in certain contexts, like take highway driving, it's a problem that is generally solved. So if any one of you drives a Tesla, autopilot works extremely well in highways, a completely different games in city centers or even small town or rural areas. Now, even if the technology itself is already successful, is already robust on highways at different weather conditions and visibility. I don't think we will see full autonomous driving on highways until the point we have enveloped highways. What does it mean to envelope highways? First of all, I believe that autonomous driving is fully successful when every single car is autonomous driving. Because even on highways where driving behavior is quite predictable and standard, it's enough one person doing something weird or saying unusual, there would be like one of those outlier points in the whole range of training data that artificial intelligence algorithms have been trained on, and lead to like disastrous mistakes. Moreover, on roads we lack protocols like car-to-car connectivity, so communication between vehicles, and car-to-infrastructure communication, so communicating with the infrastructure, guardrails. Roads are defined for human drivers. They're not designed for autonomous drivers. So until the point where we don't have enough enveloping of the world around cars, I don't think autonomous driving will be completely successful. And now this concept, however, has a profound implication when we speak about digital realities. And let's take Facebook. So with Facebook, we created an envelope around our lives. So we enveloped a lot of social interactions in our lives. So we created a digital playground where social interactions, networking, community engagement, relationship with families and friends are all contained and operated within the same platform. Now, the platform served as this digital space where initially, the early days of Facebook, we connected with friends and family. However, as it evolved, we unconsciously expanded this envelope, allowing algorithms to analyze behaviors, to analyze preferences, likes, interactions. And that was used to power the business models of a company like Facebook and all the other social media that developed since then. And so if you think about enveloping the digital sphere, it means that we let the technology shape our lives up to a point where artificial intelligence that can be successful, can operate successfully. Because if you take, for example, let's go back to think about Grammarly. For those of you who don't know Grammarly, it's an app that corrects grammar as you type. So you type in any interface on Word or Google Docs or online in any form, or your email. And there is this plugin that tells you how to write better grammar, but also better styles. Like it's more nuanced than a grammar correction. Now, if as a society we didn't fully move to digital writing, an AI like Grammarly could not be successful. So if we kept on writing by hand or on typewriters, we would not have the success of Grammarly. So digital environments function as envelope as far as they create these invisible bubbles where we move and operate, and artificial intelligence agents can be successful. So Facebook became a space, an envelope where AI could operate successfully. However, we didn't realize the breadth of this operation, like what it meant for, especially for vulnerable users like teenagers. We didn't know what what the consequences could have been. So what happens with digital technology is that we change our world so that AI can work more effectively, even if the software itself is not like smart in the way humans are. And so I think this, I hope this concept is clear, this concept of enveloping. When translated in the digital world, it becomes a bit more abstract, but I'm happy to address questions later. What's important for this is that it really it is because of this enveloping that we started seeing many ethical problems of artificial intelligence agents. Digitally enveloped spaces become manipulating interfaces. So for instance, in advertising, consumers, like people like us using these tools, we are reduced to interfaces between money and markets. So the customer is no longer us, it's no longer the user, we are just cogs in the machine. We are an interface between transactions. And as the environment becomes more and more enveloped, the ethical problems and considerations and issues grow. So one big questions, and I hinted at this point in my introduction when I was defining what is ethics, what is business ethics, is that a critical consideration to make is how we treat human beings. So we with digital enveloping, we are at risk of becoming mere cogs in the machine, driven by the efficiency of enveloping. So the more efficient is the enveloping, the more successful are the AI agents. And within all these gears and machines, how do we maintain our humanities? And this helps me to segue into the third and last part of this talk, which is about ethical considerations, principle, questions. And I want to start from some principles, again, proposed by Professor Floridi in his work on the ethics of AI. He analyzed the principle that most of the reputable sources of AI, let's say researchers or organizations, worked out, and he summarizes them in 4 principles that are the first 4: beneficence, non-maleficence, autonomy, justice. And these 4 principles are very similar or the same of bioethics. And Floridi adds a 5th principle in the realm of AI, which is explicability. And I want to add a caveat here. We don't want to confuse explicability with explainability of machine learning models. There is a growing area of research which is about explaining how the machine learning models makes decisions. This is not like the ethical principle referred here. Explicability is more about the reason why a certain model was implemented or used in a given context, and the liability. So we can trace back the liability to a choice, like a bank make the decisions to develop a customer service bot. Even if we cannot understand exactly all the inner workings of how the bot reaches a certain outcome, we can trace back why a decision was made to put that bot to do customer service, and what was the objective that the bank tried to reach, and so on. Now, these principles are interesting, are great. However, I think they're quite difficult to grasp how to put them in practice. And on the other hand, a lot of policymakers, ISO standards in other fields are working around principles that are similar to these ones or adopting these ones. And we have to wait and see how legislators will translate principles like these into laws and regulations. And in the meanwhile, I myself, like working as a data scientist every day, or having gone through real world applications and clients engaging me to develop some machine learning tools or service. I had, on the everyday life, I have to take decisions on what projects to accept, what technologies to develop. And so I want to give some other points that are inspired by these principles, but also developed over time and experience in my working on data science projects. Now, for the everyday data scientist, today we also have the ISO 42001. And now the full text of the ISO standard is under a paywall. So I do recommend data scientists, I think it's a couple of $100, but I think it's very useful to learn what the ISO standards recommends, and Engineering standards are always super useful to learn and understand why they're specified in a certain way and what they address. There is an interesting differentiation between, let's say, classical engineering and AI. In engineering, like if you think about building a bridge, standards are aimed at, let's say, avoiding any chance of error. So the standard exists so that there is no error, or the error is minimized so much that we perfectly know how to manage, and we know how to quantify the error and take decisions respectively. Now, in AI, there is a big difference. I was mentioning earlier when defining AI. AI, which is today based on many, let's say for the major part of AI applications on machine learning, it inherently has statistical error, and sometimes it's even difficult to quantify. Many times we have statistical error on a test set that we use to train a model, but when we let the model operate in the real world, it's a completely different beast, and we may see even larger error rates or even smaller. So it's important to understand the standards, and if you check some of the table of contents, there are many like headers that are they're very interesting, because in my whole experience working for large companies developing models and data science and machine learning tools, I've never seen working on many of these headers. For instance, context of the organization, understanding organization, its context, needs and expectations of the interest parties. I experienced only once discussions, like high level executive discussions and directions given to a data science team on needs and expectations of interested parties, like mapping all the stakeholders that an AI model affects. Again, just engaging in these exercises takes away a huge amount of, let's say, ethical issues and problems. And for example, a positive example I have is at Tesla Insurance. Like Tesla Insurance, I think it's a great example of ethical development of AI. The algorithm that decides the premium of the Tesla Insurance is called the safety score. And if you Google Tesla safety score, there is a whole page published by Tesla explaining exactly like how the model works. It's super transparent. It also shows the equation. So if you have, let's say, if you understand enough the math, you can actually play with the numbers. You can work out exactly how your premium is going to be, and understand yourself the inner workings of the algorithm. And again, when we developed Tesla Insurance, we were given a lot of these guidelines. Like, for instance, Elon was adamant that customers should be able to understand exactly the relationship between input and output. So transparency was very important, and that leads choices, because there were, like, analyzing the data, we had way more powerful models to predict risk of collisions, etc. However, the algorithms were very difficult to grasp, so we had to choose different models to satisfy like an ethical and business constraint. There were other issues like related to, for instance, people don't like to be overly controlled by algorithms and data points. So even if the Tesla car capture like 6,000 data points every second from more than 6,000 sensors, we only used a bunch of those, like I think less than 10, and then we combined them, and in the end of the day we worked out 5 data inputs that are built by combining probably 10 or 15 data inputs. And again, that's an important choice with many ethical considerations. If we look at other like headlines of the ISO standards, there are a lot of considerations to make, like leadership planning, support, awareness, communication. Again, great deal of communication on how the model is gonna be used, deploy. If we think about most of the AI models, like nobody knows they're even operating like on social media. That this is a great example. Whereas on on the Tesla insurance side, again, you can see the page that describes the whole inner workings of how it works. It's a great implementation of communication and documentation. AI risk assessment and treatment, again, this is an area where I've never seen that done for many data science problems and products put out in the real world. So I stop here, but I just want to point out to these resources a very interesting point to get started for the everyday data scientists to start thinking about issues that maybe in their teams or in their organizations it's not straightforward. They don't think every day. The other points I put here, foundational questions, objective tracking, are just some highlights of the ISO standards. But we will, I'll come back to that here, where I want to describe some ethical principles that I mapped out in my book on the ethics of AI. That I summarize in, act like a human. Again, if we don't want to be treated as machines, let's not behave as machines. So for engineering teams and data scientists like me, that's an easy trap to fall into. We get excited about developing algorithms and then looking at them, how they work, and making predictions, and we get all excited about all the statistics that we can create and manipulate. But it's always good to stop, and even before engaging into an AI or machine learning implementation, stop and ask. Like TST is the Socrates principle of asking definitions, what it is, in front of everything that we do and use. This is the same principle that I followed for this talk. I started from definitions. Like, it's very important when engaging in a data science project, let's define the objectives, the KPIs, the stakeholders, the processes, and this is a lot of these principles encapsulate what we have seen in the ISO standard, and it relates to the point of asking foundational questions. Like it's not enough to get excited to predict time spent on platform. We should really ask why do we need to measure time spent on platform, or if we want to develop an algorithm that maximizes time spent on platform on YouTube, is it the right thing to do? Like, yes, brings a lot of money, fantastic for the P&L, but how does it look for the everyday users? What happens if the algorithm is successful and people spend countless of hours in front of YouTube? Is this a desirable outcome? And the other 2 points are very important. So data is people. It's always again, data scientists get bogged down by the excitement of working with data, forgetting that this is not just numbers and equations and getting a model with high accuracy and be happy about it. But asking foundational questions is also about what are we doing with this data? What kind of aspect of a person are we manipulating using this data? This is a foundational question to always ask. And finally, feedback loops. It's really important. Like I was saying earlier, that when we develop models, we test them with a test set, but then in real life, they always behave in different ways. And feedback loops means deciding before even embarking into an AI project, what are we going to do when things go wrong? Or what are we going to do with the user feedback? What are we going to do when we have an unexpected outcome? All of these should be mapped out at outset. We don't have to wait until the crash happens or the big PR stunt happens to decide what to do, or even take decisions like shutting down a model or shutting down a tool. And finally, another big ethical principle is really being human. What does it mean to be a human person? What are human persons? And I want to just trace three pillars of what makes humans humans. Humans are free people. We are persons with agency and freedom. We should preserve that. We should fight to preserve that, and we should defend it. In many ways that we developed envelopes around our digital lives, we we didn't realize how much these envelopes has taken a toll into our personal freedom. We are also people of relationships. We human beings are relational beings. They're not standalone islands. And again, if we think about how the impact of many algorithms in social media, they're working in the opposite direction. And finally, a word on transcendence. Transcendence can be thought of, in many ways. That there are also some religious connotation to it. But here, I really want to underline this. There is this inner force in human person to overcome limits. If you think about the sports, like the greatest athletes are always in a sort of fight against themselves, against their limit. They always want to overcome a certain limit. In technology, like the whole purpose and point of developing technology is to work around limits that maybe nature or the world as it is creates, and we find ways to always overcome this limit. And there is this inner desire of always transcend limits. And again, if you think about how many of the AI algorithms are deployed and developed, can we really say that these products, these tools, are safeguarding these three critical aspects of humanity? Which brings me to the conclusion, which is the other person is a human. So which means we are responsible for what we do. In the everyday work as a data scientist, again, is often easy to forget responsibility. But the whole point, let's say, that got me interested into the ethical aspects of AI and so on, was really that when I was working as an actuary for insurance companies, I always thought, look, I was pricing insurance policies using some statistical techniques, etc. But it's not just dried math. If I make a decision, like I adopt one model versus another, or I choose a certain statistical quantity to fix a price versus another, that has a immediate social impact, because choosing a statistical quantity over another means that the price is going to be lower or higher, which means a part of the population will afford the insurance cover, another part will not. So there is a straight line between statistical work, math, engineering, and what is the impact on the real world. And we, as human person, we need to feel and see the responsibility we have of these developments and these choices. So I stop here. I'm sorry I spoke a lot, and I want to give you, like, let's say, three ways to stay in touch and connect with me. The first one on your left. From your left to your right, you can use the QR code to subscribe to my Substack called Honest AI, where I treat topics like the ones you heard today. And second one, LinkedIn. Connect with me, private message me if you have any questions or follow-up from these conversations. The last one is my book on the ethics of AI on Amazon. It's available in any country, so if you change the Amazon website extension to your country, you will find it in your country. One final word, in terms of what's next for me, I'm working to support a startup which is currently in stealth mode, working at the intersection between AI and software security. If you have any interest in that field, or you know people who wants to speak with me on that field, feel free to private message me on LinkedIn. I stop here, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alberto. We may actually have just enough time to address David's question. David had a couple of questions in the chat. Do you mind responding to those questions? So the first one is about the role of, by the way, David, if you don't mind, you can unmute yourself and interact with Alberto directly, but I'll be also be happy to read out your questions if that's what you prefer.
No, I had two questions. They're slightly different, Alberto. And again, thank you. I really enjoyed your talk. One is the role of corporate legal departments in AI product development. in my tenure, product development and product management, the legal departments were very often consulted before we could go ahead with any like new product or new initiative. And my concern is that I feel that they're terribly behind and are not prepared for their legal role in the rapid pace of AI. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that question.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I think it's a very important point, and I have the same experience, especially in heavily regulated industries like banking and insurance. Legal compliance departments heavily involved in any, let's say, digital or product decision. It is true. It is true that these professionals are really behind in understanding, and I think so. Luckily, there are many upskilling initiatives that I see, either internally, like I get contacted quite often by companies. For example, there is a large bank in London now that is engaging with me to create e-learning content for the bank on these topics, especially for like non-technical audiences. And I think that's more directed to compliance and legal departments. There are many initiatives outside, like from the Coursera and edX platforms. There are really many courses targeting this type of audiences. Now, the problem I see is more kind of developing a high sense of critical thinking, because a lot of this content starts already from the wrong foot by entering into debates about the superintelligence, the existential threats, and so on. Because there is this problem of defining AI, and the definition of AI has an immediate repercussion on legal aspect of it. And this is still an ongoing debate. I share your concern. I don't have a solutions other than try to educate the public. What do we really mean when we speak about this software?
I had one other question, and it's somewhat related. With if legal departments can actually put a seal of approval on new products coming to market, I see some personal parallels between what happened in the realm of ethics with genetic research, stem cell research, and other things in the whole like genome space that was pivotal in the Cambridge area when it came to genetic research. Do you agree with that assessment, or are they quite different in your opinion?
I agree. I would agree with that assessment. And on one hand, again, the principles I was describing from the work of Luciano Floridi, those principles are exactly worded as the same for bioethics, which is the higher, let's say, branch of genetic research. But on the other side, I think my personal opinion is also that as I tried to explain with this concept of enveloping of the digital life and so on, we have seen that AIs have really the power to shape a lot of the constituents of a human person. So as genetic editing would create like different human beings, AI tools can have a direct impact in our mind, like the way we think, the way we make choices, the way we purchase. Like a lot of behaviors now are highly influenced by algorithms. Even an algorithm that as least invasive as a recommendation system, like recommending you to read a book is going to be a big influence of your life. So I think it's the right interpretation to see ethical principles very close tied with genetics.
It's very interesting because I don't want to. Don't have further questions, but it does seem that the algorithms are creating echo chambers.
Yes.
For people, where you basically stay inside your echo chamber bubble or your envelope bubble if you're not aware that the algorithms are at work. And I'll stop there with my questions.
Thank you, David.